With the whole world coming to an end, and all of us being trapped inside a lot longer than we thought we were going to be, I was struck by an idea. Let's make a video. Let's make a whole series. And why not make it about something you can actually talk about? And I recently did a video with a lady by the name of Savia Rocks. It's the Us People podcast. And when it comes out, I will be sharing that on my Twitter and probably my Instagram. I need to start using Instagram a lot more. If you came here from the podcast, hi, welcome. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my diatribes about writing. What am I doing with this? What's this? This is a writing guide for people who want to write. You might feel overwhelmed by the ocean of videos and blogs out there discussing 3 acts versus 5 acts. What the hell is a Freytag's pyramid? Is a logline as delicious as it sounds? So I guess the only question left now is, do I have an intro? Oh, I think I do. Kurt Vonnegut once said, every character should want something, even if it's just a glass of water. What he's talking about is creating motivation. It's creating a goal. What I want you to do is grab something you can write on and write down a name, a rough age, and an occupation for your protagonist. Maybe pause the video whilst you do these things. You done? Good for you. You're making progress. Next, I want you to write just two very short, concise, to the point sentences describing this character. Not physically, emotionally, who they are as a person. Now, I've got a list of traits down below. By all means, click on that link and use it. It's pretty comprehensive. One thing I do recommend remembering is that flawed characters are relatable, but no one likes a Mary Sue. And for those of you who don't know what a Mary Sue is, this is that character that can do everything, and like their virtue or their biggest weakness is that they care too much and they're just too handsome or beautiful or whatever. They're that empathetic, loving character who can knock out whatever political candidate you hate most with a single punch, and they're very flat. No one likes them. You can see what they are straight from the gate. If you want to have a character that represents something you believe in, make them flawed. Everyone has flaws. Everyone. That done, what is the most important thing in the world to your protagonist? Is it their spouse? Is it their ego and their pride? Is it possibly their Super Bowl ring? I don't have one, I'm just showing you where it would be if I did. You don't, again, short, concise, to the point notes. You don't need to write an essay for this. This is just a reference sheet. And remember, a 15-year-old schoolgirl who thinks that her girlfriend or boyfriend is cheating on her is going to deal with that situation in a very different way from a 35-year-old war veteran. So your 15-year-old schoolgirl might be brave and tenacious, and she'll plow through this investigation no matter how much the truth starts to hurt her. But your war veteran, maybe he's just seen too much, or she's just seen too much, and they just can't take it anymore, and they just break down and they spiral. But threaten it. Threaten the thing that matters most to them, and then make a note of how they would react to that. Play with ideas. Paint a living person. Using that little reference sheet you've just created, come up with a goal for your character. Something credible and realistic for that kind of person based on their occupation and their personality. Take that goal and write down what happens if your character fails. Write down the worst possible outcome of that goal. Okay, final part. What is the new goal? So, take the original goal, the failure, and who they are as a person. What was the new goal? So what's another example we can go with? A young woman, she's a journalist, and her father is murdered. Nice simple detective story. So her goal would be to uncover and unmask her father's killer, but she fails. Because her father's killer, well, she traces him back to a police station. Turns out he's a corrupt cop in a small town where he is untouchable. Well, her adjusted goal becomes trick him into confessing, to a hot mic or a camera. Hopefully, you can now see the basics of a plot arc unfolding. You have your primary goal, what happens if she fails or he fails, and the new goal. Okay, so you've got that. So that's your little reference sheet, your little quick reference sheet. Shouldn't be more than a page at this point. If you have an essay, you need to not do that. You don't want to overwrite at this point. Save it for the story. Keep things simple now. Okay, if you can't compress everything down to like a sentence, you're overthinking it. But if you've reached this point, congratulations. You have the basics of a character. You're off to a start. That's it. That's all it is. That's as simple as it is. We're going to cover wounds and arcs and all that now, but you have the basics. Congratulations. Okay, so speaking of arcs, speaking of character development, arcs. Welcome to arcs. There are hundreds of arcs you can use in your development. There are 3 arcs. Number 1, the positive arc. This is the one we're going to be using in this guide. The positive arc is pretty much what it sounds like. They're all pretty self-explanatory based on their names. The positive arc is positive. It means that your protagonist, your hero, your whatever, starts here in the land of, oh no, this is terrible, everything is terrible, I hate being in the world of terrible. And then throughout the story, through their actions, through the plot, through the things they experience and live through, they land here. Oh look, the land of happiness, hooray! The flat arc sits quite nicely in the middle and is the arc most commonly used for villains and your big bad guys who don't really change. Hans Gruber, God, showing my age. Hans Gruber from the first Die Hard was a flat arc. He did not change. He was a bad guy at the start of the movie, he was a bad guy at the end of the movie. And he's iconic. But it's just to show that you don't need to have massive amounts of character development to have an interesting and complex character. People to this day still argue that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm one of them. A great example of this being used in a protagonist, for a protagonist, is the movie The Wrestler it was written by Robert Siegel. Siegel? I wonder if he's related to Steven. Probably not. So, The Wrestler. I believe it stars, just gonna look this up. Ooh, 2008. Oh, there's another one. 1974. So yeah, it stars Mickey Rourke. Great actor, by the way. Love him. Anyway, so the movie is about a wrestler who is aging, and he is trying to hold on to his glory days. And everyone's telling him to get out, move on, leave it behind, you know, there's a whole other life there for you. He ignores him, he remains the same. And then tragedy befalls him. But that is an example of an amazing movie that uses a flat arc. The last one is the negative arc. Do I need to give examples? Yeah, I'll give examples. I'll do that. So the negative arc, you start here. This time it's Happy Land. We're starting in the land of cookies and milk and other things that are traditionally positive. And through the actions and what happens throughout the story, the microphone is so close. Through the story, the character ends up over here in the land of, oh no, everything's terrible. Pretty sure that's situated in England somewhere. Anyway, yeah, negative arc. The character ends up in a bad place. Now, my personal favorite example of this is the video game Spec Ops: The Line. Fantastic. The main character is Walker, and he's this cocky, I'm Spec Ops, and I'm here to kick ass and shoot people in the face. And throughout the story, things happen. Bad things, horrible. There were moments where I was like, oh, okay, that's not ideal. And by the end of the story, the character's mind is so shattered that he can't even tell what's real anymore. It's a fantastic example of a negative arc done skillfully to the point where you actually feel bad for the protagonist. So, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with my examples? I mean, positive arcs, I didn't give one, but let's be honest, it's pretty much the entire film industry at this point. All your summer blockbusters, all your feel-good TV shows, they're all positive arcs. You don't really need to make any notes for that part. Just, it's more for reference so you understand and know what we're dealing with. And for completion. Okay, so we're gonna get into some heavy stuff now. I want to preface this with some warnings. We're gonna be discussing emotional wounds. This can be quite intense. If you have suffered anything catastrophic in your life, first of all, I'm sorry that happened to you. Second of all, if it's still kind of a raw nerve, I recommend maybe skipping this part. Okay, so wounds are that deep emotional trauma that many of us have experienced. And it's one of those things that will cut deep and stick around to the point it begins to define who you are as a person. So when I was a kid, I suffered with bullying quite badly. I came here in the 90s when England was a little spiky towards foreigners, and as a result, my self-esteem was really undermined, and I grew up feeling very worthless for most of my life. And that's why as an adult, I took up mixed martial arts, which really helped me, really gave me a sense of identity. I hate confrontation, I hate violence, but knowing I can deal with it gives me a lot of strength, and I've earned 2 degrees. And I feel I did those things to prove to myself that I have value. And now, obviously, I'm in therapy as well. And all these things kind of culminate, but all of these things stem from that bullying, that pain, that never feeling like I belonged anywhere, that always wanting to be part of the group and never being allowed to. And the schools I went to didn't help. Teachers would often join in. The reason I'm sharing this is because as someone who has mental health issues as an adult, I'm telling you that because that's where it comes from, and the personal issues that surround that. And now as an adult, I am very empathetic, I'm very caring, I try to be, I like helping people. This video is a testament to that. Just remember that if you want to write a compelling character, it helps if they have some kind of wound. And if you don't want to do anything really intense like psychological trauma and bullying and PTSD, maybe lean towards something a little bit more rom-com, or maybe something a little bit lighter. I don't know what you're writing. I don't know what genres you're into. I don't know how heavy you want to go. You can do some really nasty, gritty, grimdark stuff. If you want to do something a bit more lightweight, maybe the wound is it's a young man and he's going to prom with this girl he's got a crush on, and then on prom night she stands him up and he's left there with his little flower in his suit and everything, and he gets denied that night, and he gets denied that happiness. Well, his wound is that happened to him, that he was stood up on prom night. That's the wound, that's the thing, that's the injury that cut deep and rotted away from his inside. So what I want you guys to do for your character profile, assuming you're still with us and assuming that it's not going to cause you any kind of distress or pain, because that's the last thing I want from this video, and just write down a wound for your character. So take your character reference sheet, write down wound, and then just again a sentence. Stood up on prom night. That's what I'm going with. Maybe with our journalist who's hunting the murderer of her father, maybe she witnessed it. Maybe her wound is that she saw that happen. Depends on how heavy you want to get with it. If you have that in place, what I want you to do now is write down the false belief, the idea that comes from that wound. So like I was saying a minute ago, because I was bullied so badly as a kid, the belief I had growing up was that I was unlikable and that I had no value as a person. That's what I believed for a very long time. To be fair, sometimes that still sneaks in when I'm not ready to defend against it. For our literary examples, our young woman who witnessed the murder of her father, well, she witnessed the murder of her father, so false belief is that she's not safe. The person she loved most was killed in front of her. That would leave you feeling very unsafe. If it's our young man on his prom night, well, getting ditched on prom night would leave you feeling very unattractive. He might grow up to think he's very ugly and doesn't deserve to be loved. You have your wound, watched her father get murdered. The false belief, I will never be safe. The world is a dangerous place. That's it. That's all you need. So, one sentence for the wound, one sentence for what they believe from that. And if you can make that tie into your character's personality, even better. Remember, personality is defined by experience. This leads us quite nicely to the last section on character design, internal versus external conflict. And what I want to do with this is keep this very, very tight. How do we break this down? Well, the external conflict is everything happening around the character. The internal conflict is everything happening on the inside of the character. So your external conflict is the plot. So for our young woman who's hunting the murderer of her father, well, the external conflict is hunting the murderer. Her internal conflict would be working out that she can feel safe again. Going from, I don't feel safe, to, okay, maybe I can, which is where your character arc comes from. It's almost as if this whole thing was planned. So like I say, the internal plot, the internal conflict is everything happening on the inside of your character. So take another look at your wound, and take another look at the false belief your character has about the world, and kind of flip that. So, for example, our young woman who watched her father get murdered and is now hunting the murderer, the arc will be complete when she goes from feeling unsafe and as if she's living in a world of danger, all the way over to feeling somewhat secure in the world. You won't solve that in the space of a 90-minute screenplay or a 90,000 word novel, unless it spans years and she's going to therapy and everything. But that's extraneous detail. So you're going from she doesn't feel safe to she's overcome that fear of living in a violent world and is starting to feel secure. Or our young man who got shut down on prom night, his internal conflict and therefore his arc goes from I feel ugly and worthless and no one will ever love me, and his arc will be complete when he reaches the other side and has self-esteem and self-value. Again, not something that can necessarily be beaten or overcome in a 90-minute screenplay or 90,000 word, 70,000 word novel, but something to work towards. Maybe for him it would simply be a situation of he reaches the other side and he finds love. How delightful. So there's your basic character guide. Here at the end of this video, you should have a basic profile for your character, their goal, all of their adjusted goals, a wound, and a basic character arc to work through. Your external goal will come from your goals, your internal conflicts will come from that wound. You're good to go. Well done. If you've got that complete list, that's it. You've got a character set up. Now what you got to do is take everything I just taught you and apply it to your antagonist. Now you have two characters ideally in opposition to each other, and you're ready. Thanks for sticking around. I hope I have helped you. I hope my information has been useful, and I wish you all the happiness in the world.